All right, here we go, y'all. We live on Facebook. Want to thank you guys for tuning in for another week of the Marvin Bennett Show. Tonight's show, thank you guys for that tuned in last week. It was pretty successful. We was off to a good start. This week here, we're going to mix it up a little bit. Last week, we was going on with the state of the world right now. This week, we're going to be doing the teachers edition. With, school year's coming to an end. So I got a few teachers, current teachers, and a few former teachers. So we might have a few surprises along the way. But we're going to get into this edition, and we're going to just be kind of covering on, the state of the world, this new thing about online school, and if this is a new thing, how do you guys feel about it? And hopefully, some of these teachers that's on tonight will be able to give you guys some tips. Before we get even started, I'm going to close out the show again, but we want to give a special shout out to all the graduates this year that graduated 2020, whether it be from middle school, going to high school to college, you graduated college. We salute you, whether seminary, whatever it is that you graduated from. Hats off to you, and we congratulate you. So first up, we're going to be talking to Miss Shayna Wilson. Like, Shayna, you can come on and tell the people about yourself.
All right, my name is Shayna Willis, and I am a kindergarten teacher. I teach in Durham at a charter school called Excelsior Classical Academy. I have been in the classroom for 11 years, but I did not start leading until 4 years ago. It took me a while to figure out what it was I wanted to do. I was young, and I was at a point where I was still trying to find myself, and I kept getting calls and I kept getting invites to work with the youth at church especially. And so when I did that, I tapped into my hidden talent, which was the youth and teaching. And so I enjoy it. I love it. I have my first degree in biology. I graduated with that in 2008 from North Carolina Central University. And I just graduated with my second degree in education this year. And so in elementary ed this year. I am certified K through 6, and I am just enjoying it. I've even enjoyed teaching digitally. It's just something I'm passionate about and something I see myself tiring doing. So that's me in a nutshell.
All right, and what while we all have you, what are some of the things that you recommend for some of these parents that's going through school and now they don't understand the adversities that teachers face every day?
Well, one of the first things I would like to tell parents is to just be patient with themselves because they've never taught, and be patient with their child because they are holding some of the responsibility of teaching their child new material. So there's got to be patience for that child and patience with that parent. That is probably the most important recommendation I have. The second recommendation I would give parents is to come up with a schedule, come up with an organized schedule that you and your child can follow every day. Children love structure and they need structure. And the parents need it too because they're still working. They're still working most likely from home. So they need that organization as well. And if I could think of anything else, it would be to constantly communicate with that teacher. That teacher should be nearly, to me, on standby. I know I was when I taught these last 3 months. They should nearly be on standby, constantly checking email, to definitely stay in touch and stay in contact with the parents need to stay in contact with that teacher consistently, because what I have found is that there's a lot of parents that want to teach ideas the way they were taught when things are now being taught differently. So I recommend definitely before, especially anything new or anything that's somewhat unfamiliar, I recommend that parent touch base with the teacher. Those are my 3 recommendations that come off the top of my head. If I have any more, I'll add some more.
All right. We thank you for that too, because special shout out. This edition is about teachers, but want to give a shout out to the parents too.
Yeah.
Thankfully, during this COVID-19 and this new era of school, my boys have graduated, so I ain't have to worry about that burden, so to speak. But I'm quite sure when we get back to the classrooms, you teachers will have a whole new level of appreciation You'll start getting fruit baskets from the parents and everybody else now. Instead of the angry letters, why you picking on my son? Now that they know with them same bad kids all day, they know exactly what they were going through. So I think you guys will be a little bit more sympathetic now. All right, thanks, Shayna. So next up, we got my man Leonard. Everybody, all the West Side graduates that's watching, you know him from our morning news every morning. Like Leonard, come on and talk about yourself, and how long you've been teaching now, why you've been teaching as long as you have, and just the joys that you get out of teaching.
Well, peace, Marv. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm in Maryland, and I just finished my 21st year this year teaching.
Wow.
I've been at the same school for the last 19 years. And I teach math, the one subject that is favorite for some and not favorite for others, but it's all good. I teach the big people. I teach the high school people because I feel like I'm a better connection and relate better with the high schoolers. But when I decided I wanted to be a teacher, it was kind of late when I was an undergrad. I didn't start off as an education major. I started off as an engineering major at Tuskegee University. And the way I got into education was helping my friends that was in the same math class as me. And, they were like, you explain this a lot better than the actual professor explains it. And so I kind of went with that motivation and decided to change my major into math education at that point, thus graduating and getting my bachelor's of arts in education, math education. A few years down the line, after I graduated, I got my master's in curriculum and instruction, thanks to my sister who encouraged me to go to grad school when I did. And I'm so glad she encouraged me to go when I did, when I was young. Exactly. And so, I know you asked why I've been teaching so long. And I guess if you would have asked me 20 years ago, would I still be teaching right now? And I probably would have said no, because I probably had some other things going on, like, oh, I want to get out of the classroom and do this. And, oh, I want to. But being in the classroom, quite honestly, being with the kids gives me some type of energy to kind of keep going, even on days where I'm not feeling well. And it's just not just saying it. Being around kids, being around young people, they give you energy and they give you motivation. And I think that's what keeps me going year after year after year. And I think with this whole process of distance learning, like you said earlier, nobody was prepared for this. Like none of us, when we went to undergrad and grad school, we were not trained on any type of distance learning. It was literally thrown in our laps, and you had like however many amount of weeks you had to prepare for it and roll it out. And what I could say is, every place was different in their approach and how they did it. Some places, quite honestly, may have been doing it for a long time and it wasn't a big deal for them. But in my situation, it was a challenge. I'm not going to lie. But, in my position now, the last 3 years, I'm the head of the math department. So I've been in charge of the math department. So not only am I still teaching, but I'm also over a department of 18 teachers. That's a big department. And so trying to get out resources to them and information constantly, as it's constantly changing day after day after day, it was very, very challenging. But I think throughout this whole process, I learned a whole lot. And I did learn a whole new way of teaching doing this. There's a lot of different resources out there that you can use to support your students and help your students, even if you're not sitting in front of them, including this platform that we're on right now. And there's just so many different ways you can reach them. But what I also say is, coming from the high school level, I also recognize, I always felt like I had a certain level of empathy, but I really had a lot more of it after going through this experience, because a lot of people out here really don't know what's going on in a lot of people's households, right? Like you have kids, that you may have not hear from, and it's not intentional. It may be that they're sick. It may be that their parents are sick, so now they have to take care of the household. It may be that there's no income coming in the house. So guess what? They have to go out and get a job and they have to work. So school is going to get put on the back burner. And you have to kind of understand that and have to be empathetic with them throughout this whole process and just realizing that. So throughout all of that, I learned how to be a little more empathetic and understanding in different situations. I also think as a country, I think that they're going to look at education after this whole experience a whole lot different. I think they're going to look at teachers a whole lot different. And I do see some changes coming down in a good way, some changes coming down the pipe after it's all said and done. I definitely see some positives from it, but I'm not gonna lie, it was a struggle in the beginning, just to get comfortable with it. And I have teachers, that I work with in my building who's never done anything like this. It's like, I've been doing it this way for umpteen years. I want to continue doing it this way. Now you're telling me I have to get in front of a camera and teach children. So it was a struggle, but I think people have now embraced it. And the one thing I did encourage my teachers that I got from someone who's above me that said a message to me that stuck with me. It says, make yourself appear valuable during this process. And I thought that was very important. It wasn't a situation where, I didn't want my teachers just pushing out worksheets and saying, check in with me, this, like, engage, like, make sure if you're given a lesson, you don't have to give a full 45-minute lesson, but give them a little 15, 20-minute lesson and then let them kind of go off and do their thing. But stay engaged. That was the important thing. Make sure that people out here know that our jobs are valuable. So that was the big takeaway from me this year.
All right. So thanks, El. And then, so El, me and El, we graduated together from high school, so we've been rocking for 30 years. But next up, we got my very first friend from Westside High School, the very first person I met, biology, 5th period. Miss Catherine Jackson was our teacher. My main man, Ed Wilson. Ed, come on and tell the people about your credentials, Dr. Sir.
What's going on, man? How's everyone? Peace, family. That's taking it back. I'm just even looking at the people who are participating. I see. First thing, this shouts to Mr. Pallotta. What's going on, man?
Yes.
It's been a minute. You know what I'm saying? Shouts to Leonard too, man. I didn't even know that you were in education, but I'm thrilled to hear that. I think to what's been said by some of the other people who you have on, first I feel thankful for the opportunity to do that for. I just recently completed my doctorate in leadership. I've been working now in education. Leonard, I think I heard you say you've been in 21. I have a little bit more time on you, so I'm not even going to, I would just leave it at that. So, but administratively, I'll say I've been in administration now for at least the last maybe 10 years or so, or going on 10 years. I started out as an assistant principal, and now, I'm a principal. I've been a principal now for the last 4 or 5 years or so, something like that. But all told, I'm going to pretty much my 10th year as an administrator. So I kind of see it from, two different lenses and perspectives, definitely on the instruction side. So far as what the teachers are now required to do and forced to do, really. And then also from an administrative in so far as navigating all these different options and nuances of the virtual platform, the virtual space. I'm familiar with the Maryland system actually as well too, and I know it's a little bit cumbersome, so to speak, but they're, much like DC. Well, DC, I know they have the centralized setup there, I believe still, but in New Jersey, it still operates pretty much, state to state, county to county, and everything like that. Mm-hmm. So I guess the one thing that I would start with is, I think it was Miss Willis, or Shayna Willis, talking a little bit about just I would say the comfort level of teachers now has definitely been pushed and challenged. The envelope has definitely been pushed because it's now forced teachers to step out of that bubble, and to what Leonard was just saying, is forcing you to learn something new. You might have been doing it, for a certain way for the last 10 plus years or so, but now you're forced to learn a new skill, if you look at it like that, and forced to use technology. Because I can tell you, I think with the initial, no one ever thought that we would be in this space in terms of virtual instruction. However, the irony of that is that at the collegiate level, they've always been equipped and prepared for that because there was always a hybrid model. You know what I mean? Just a combination of both the online as well as the face-to-face, live, in-person contact. And so now, what I can definitely tell you from things that I'm hearing and just in my day-to-day, the virtual platform isn't going anywhere. Gone are the days of snow days. Gone are the days of if a kid gets suspended, he or she can still engage and do the work. Even during inclement weather, guess what? Less instruction can still occur. So those days, those days are gone. And I think to Leonard's point, you're going to see a very closer look or reassessment of education moving forward, public education moving forward because of the virtual space that we're in. And I think it is to the betterment of the profession. I think there's still some things that needs to be worked out. Obviously, when we do go back to a brick and mortar type situation, because again, I think just taking it from a socioeconomic standpoint alone, and again, I can't stress enough, you don't know. So I also worked on the child study team when I left the classroom because I'm a history, I was a history teacher. I'm always, I always say once a teacher, always a teacher. I remember that very clearly. So I'm not one of those administrators that, try to dictate and tell people, what they need to do. Like I've led classes, I've modeled lessons and so on and so forth. So I've always, said that, you have to lead by example and, pretty much inspect what you expect, basically. And so, with the virtual platform, it's a very new space. No one thought that we would ever be here in terms of education. But it's something that I think can bring a lot of good to education as well, too, because from a socioeconomic standpoint, you have to look at and consider the equity piece. And I know that's a term that's often tossed out there. But when you really understand equity, it's not about what's equal. It's about what other students have in relations to, not what they have, it's what they don't have, but it's what they need in relation to what other students already have and genuinely already, don't even need, you know what I mean? Urban districts are going to, I think, get hit the hardest, mainly because the financial resources aren't there. Just to talk legislatively, the CARES Act is providing some economic relief, but there's strings to that, you know what I mean? But if we look at a regular brick and mortar situation, which we've all, coming through our schooling, gone to, some schoolhouse, you didn't have the plexiglass, you didn't have face guards, you don't have, devices and things like that. So just those three, if you look at those three things alone, and again, now I'm putting on my administrative hat, if you look at those three things alone, that's a huge, drastic change for schools and classrooms. If you look at our students who are classified, receiving specialized services, who may have sensory issues or whatever the situation may be, putting a face mask on is going to really, really bother them. You know what I mean? So it's a question of, do you get the face guards that have like the plastic shield where you can clean them every day pretty much, and that way you can still see the student's face. You put it on their head like a hat, as opposed to putting on a face mask, which will pose so many problems. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and Marvin definitely knows this, and as well as Leonard, I grew up in Newark. You went to the Chinese spot, you had that thick ass, excuse my language, but you had that thick ass glass that you had to do a maze just to get the money and get your food and whatnot. So I don't think schools will go to that extreme, but putting plexiglass or even that part of the conversation, it baffles me because it really takes the feel out of the learning environment. It creates a more institutionalized setting and environment. Now, I taught actually in juvenile justice when I first started out, and that's a very interesting setting just from the gate. And so with these protective barriers and things like that, there's going to have to be some kind of adjustments, and then also with the schedule, whether it's a rotating schedule or drop schedule, all these things have to be, planned out. But then again, it goes back to a socioeconomic status because some of our families, they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. They don't have nannies and things like that. So it's a question of, well, how does the kid get to school if the schools are starting at or if that student's grade is starting at let's say 10 o'clock, or they're coming on every other day while the other days are virtual? You know what I mean? And do they have the device? Do they have the hotspot? Like, so all those things, those are questions that you never really had to think about when we came up in school. But now we're faced with that. And so, and this is where I say, so, where I'm going with this is why I say I think it's to the benefit of education, because it really exposes the inequity in schools and for our scholars at such an early age and within urban settings in comparison to suburban settings. Now, I work in Montclair. I'm a principal in Montclair, and Marvin and Leonard, I know you guys definitely know Montclair is like the fluffy town.
Excuse me.
Yeah, you know what I mean. But like I said, and I worked in TNEC. But what I can definitely tell you is that those areas are browning, and what I mean by that is you have a large influx of students of color, African American, Latino, Asian, who are entering these schools, entering these towns, and the challenge becomes, well, how do you educate them? You know what I mean? And so the inequity is expanded or exposed because of this closure, to really show that, this shit is not level. These kids don't have what they need. You know what I mean? So, I'm kind of glad, because it kind of forced the conversation for policymakers to really, really revisit, reform, like literally and legitimately. And then in addition to that, obviously, we see what's going on in terms of the social unrest and things like that. And so what I would say to my colleagues working in education is, keep the pressure on, keep your foot on the gas pedal, because the marching and protesting is fine, and that's cool. But if we learned anything from our forefathers, it can't stop there. Now it's time to, act on that. And, if you're in a position of leadership, whether you're in the classroom or principal or department chair or supervisor, then you have those conversations, you have that responsibility to make sure that it's equitable across the board. And that means calling people to task, calling people out, calling teachers out. And this may force some of those rotten apples out, because if they have the time, trust me, believe me when I tell you, if they have not done it already, they will be consulting with their financial planner to see what kind of money they have now, what kind of money they will be getting, because come December 2020, do not be surprised if you see a mass exodus of people retiring who's been in education for a period of time. And I'll leave it there.
All right. Good looking at it. And remind me to come back, because while you closing out on that, remind me to come back to that, because I got a question that I want to ask all of you guys, being that we kind of spread out from different areas. But up next, we got my cousin, Mr. Bobby Akbar. I kind of glad that things worked out the way that they did as far as the time, because I kind of wanted to close the show out with you two guys, in particular, Neil and Bobby, because Bobby actually teaches in Newark now. So just tell them a little bit about yourself, cuz.
Yeah. First of all, hello, everyone. Hello. So just a little bit about myself. I'm in year number 20 teaching. I've taught in the richest district in the nation to one of the worst cities, so-called cities in the nation, to teaching in Newark, teaching in Rahway, and now I'm teaching in Plainfield. I'm actually in Plainfield now. I've been in Plainfield the last 5 years. I'm a math coach. The last 3 schools I've been at was failing schools, and we got them out of status. This year I worked hand in hand with the state, and I'm glad you brought that word of equity. That's a big time word when we talk about education. And these times right here, really, we really get to see if it's equal or not in every district. Like you said, sir, with the computers and everything, every district is different. Like you said, every county is different. I live in Rahway, and what this district in Rahway is doing for the kids is totally different than what we're doing in Plainfield. We gave all of our students computers for those who needed them. And we also provided hotspots for those people who needed hotspots. With Rahway, they gave out computers, but if you don't have the internet, how you gonna do the work?
Yep.
And you would think it would be vice versa because of you know, the two different populations. I run an after-school program, which is now virtual. So I run it for the whole district. And we do a lot of different things, a lot of different platforms to try to attract the kids. And it's totally different than face-to-face. So like you were saying, I agree with 100% of everything you were saying. You know, we're getting rid of the bad apples because of it, because they got to work even harder. Yep. And they've taken them out of their comfort zone when it comes to them being able to stop doing the same thing they did for the last 10 years. You know, I'll give you a prime example. You know, at my school, I pushed the technology back in September with Google Classroom, Google Meets, and so forth, because one of our things is that at my school, which was attendance. So like you said, you know, even if the kid is absent, the kid can still attend the class and get counted as credit. Excuse me. You know, with the after school program, no, I'm sorry, I'm jumping on two topics. So at the school, you know, I push technology, different platforms, even with the parents, you know, informing the parents about different technology that they can use in order to educate themselves and help help their students. So there's many different platforms where they can watch videos, tutorials about whatever standard they're learning. And also for there's different apps out there. I had one parent that I knew from my city, you know, contact me. She didn't know the math. And I informed her of apps, different apps that's out there where you can take a picture of the question and it'll give you a breakdown of how you answer that question. So, you know, this is different ways of learning now. You know, we don't need the textbooks because, you know, everything is you know, virtual. Everything is, you know, is with technology now. And that's the big thing, you know, is that, you know, more of the older teachers, like you said, is going to be pushed out. I just found that the 3 in my building are retiring, thank God, because they were against technology, the wave of the future. You know, they were stuck in their ways and didn't want to change. So, you know, I think it's a big thing now what's going on the platform of technology. And like you were saying, the gentleman was saying before me, the principal, you know, who knows how school is going to be? You know, there's no clear answer, you know, and every state is different than the other. So every state is different. I saw something on NJ.com where they were talking about, like you said, the AB schedule. But the question is the mask. You know, I've been in the classroom where I know kids is not keeping that mask on. Those kids, the behavior kids. And I always had the so-called, I had the behavior kids, always. Even when I was in Newark, I taught BD for 3 years. Middle school. So you know. God bless you. Yeah. So, you know, these are kids bust from all over Newark, you know, going to Chancellor Ave. And so the key thing is, you know, as we move forward with education is that, you know what I mean, as far as parents, they just got to get up with the technology, same thing with the teachers, because, you know, believe it or not, the students will figure it out. You know, that's the wave, that's their life right now is technology, their phones, YouTube and other platforms that they're used to getting on. I ain't worried about the kids. You know, it's like me as a coach, I'm worried about the teachers, being able for them to learn the different platforms and learn the different ways of, you know, that students are learning now. You know, basically, you know, that's it. That's it. I don't know the other question, the other part you wanted me to answer.
No, that's cool. That's cool. What you covered was on the money. Next up, we got the man that's the reason I was offered a bowling scholarship by the high school. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I had a bowling scholarship offer. But this was not only was this one of my teachers, I'm glad to say 30 years later, I consider him as a friend. Like, Neil, if you don't mind, you can come on and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. But I kind of want you to definitely hit on, what is it like being a part of this and seeing former students 30 years later going forth in, education, doing what you want to do. And two, I want you to particularly talk about your experience or what it's like teaching in Newark. Because I was supposed to have Mr. Gas on. Mr. Gas backed out on me. Shout out to Mr. Leroy Gas. Yeah. Shout out to Mr. Leroy Gas.
Shout out Mr. Gas, yo.
Right?
10th grade English.
Oh, English.
So, I think, when it come up, I know being a student in Newark, I don't know anything about teaching, but I know being a student in Newark, it was totally different. So I can only imagine as a teacher, like, I'm quite sure when y'all go to some of these national conventions, you see another teacher, y'all talk and have teacher talk, but when you see somebody else from Newark, y'all get to have a whole different conversation because Newark is just that different. What was it like for you to be a teacher in Newark all those years?
Listen, first I want to, walk back, some of the talk about the old teachers because, I've been doing this 30 years. I started off in Newark at West Side as a sub, a couple of years there as a sub, and then I got a full-time position at George Washington Carver in Newark. Was there, about 8 more years, and then I just kind of got burned out in Newark. I mean, Marv will tell you, I love what I did in Newark. I love the kids in Newark. My Facebook is just filled with all of my, Newark kids that looked me up and said, "Hey, Mr. P, you remember, taking us to your house. You remember taking us down the shore. Do you remember, taking us bowling? Do you remember, taking us to museums during the summer?" And I'm like, I can't believe that I did all of this stuff.
You did.
But you know what? But that's what the kids needed at the time. The parents were, the parents didn't even bat an eyelash of, kids coming to my house for the weekend. And, but that's just what the kids needed, at the time. And we're talking, late 90s now. I left Newark in 99, 2000. So I'm 20 years removed from Newark. I went to Hopatcong, New Jersey, which is Sussex County. And guys, let me tell you, Ed, you've been around, Leonard, going from Newark to, where no lie, I had a vice principal call me into her office one day and say, Neil, I got to see you down. And I'm like, what's going on? Ms. Buchanan. She's like, you're getting a white student. And I was like, what? Why are you calling me in for a meeting? Because we're getting a white student. And she's like, this is a white VP, female. She's like, well, I feel like the kid will be protected in your class. She'll be safe. And, what was crazy was, honestly, the kids in my class in Newark, they didn't see color. They didn't see her as a white girl. They just saw her as, any other kid that was in the school, but it was the misconceptions on the admin, the white admin for the most part, that, the kids, oh my God, we were so fearful for this, white girl, 6th grader, 7th grader, whatever it was at the time. But, seeing the difference, leaving Newark where, chaos is the norm, not for nothing. I don't know what it's like now, but chaos just became the norm. I had a woman come into my class or come to my classroom door with a baseball bat threatening my students, because one of my students beat up her son. And I thought that was like the craziest, most outrageous thing, and I wound up calling the parents to explain what happened. And the kids didn't even tell the parents about it because it was the norm for them. They didn't even think anything of it. I went from that extreme to going into Sussex County where, there would just be one brown person in the class. And it was just remarkable for me to see the difference between the education that was afforded to the kids in Newark and the education that the opportunities that these kids have in these other towns. It's like night and day. Newark would spend a lot of money, but the money just wasn't spent in the right places, as far as I was concerned. It was just eaten up in, so many different areas. The money never trickled down to the kids. I was in my classroom when the state of New Jersey took over, or state took over in like '94. And, you know, over the next few years, my class sizes went from about 18 or 19 a class to about 35, 36 in a class.
Correct.
You know, with the state takeover. And it was just, you know, and those state people would come into my class and, you know, Mr. Pond, what can we do to, you know, help these students and improve their scores? And I would just look at them and laugh in their face and say, are you fucking kidding me? You know, there are 36 kids in this class and you're talking to me about what you can do, you know, to improve the educational opportunities for these kids. I said, you're not serious. You know, get out of here. You're not serious. You know, but to go from that, you know, to, you know, Sussex County, where, you know, I mean, you had a handful of brown people, you know, over the 20 years I've been here in Apacon, the demographics have changed a bit, you know, a lot more Hispanic, but it's just remarkable the hurdles that the kids in Newark have to overcome just to get, you know, even a chance, you know, and the kids and the, you know, that, you know, here in Sussex County where, you know, they're upset because they didn't get the quad for Christmas, you know, and in Newark, I would watch kids pick up grapes off the cafeteria floor and put them in their pocket so they'd have something to eat later. You know, it's just remarkable, you know, the difference. And, you know, I love teaching. You know, I was born to do this, even though, you know, I went kicking and screaming into it. I kind of fell into it. You know, I worked as an administrator for a year as a vice principal, and I hated it. You know, it felt like work, you know, whereas as, you know, and I wound up going back to the classroom because I just love teaching, you know, and it's, you know, I just wanted to say, you know, about this whole online stuff. You know, I've had an online presence for years. I have a YouTube channel with, you know, a couple hundred videos on it. I use my videos that I make for my students as a supplement in my classroom. I've done that for a number of years where, you know, I'll make videos of my lesson, kind of like Khan Academy videos. And I would, you know, post them on my website and make them available to students if they were absent or if they were in the nurse's office or in band, or, you know, sometimes parents would just use the videos to help the students with their homework. So I already had like this online system set up. So when this pandemic hit, I was good to go. And I've been doing this 30 years. So I'm one of those old people you're talking about pushing out, but you know, I've been doing this for a long time. So we just rolled right with the pandemic, and, you know, my kids were phenomenal. You know, phenomenal. We were doing, you know, the video lessons. I met with my students every day, you know, at set times where I would do, you know, a live session with them, you know, through, you know, Google Classroom. But I would also videotape those sessions for the kids that couldn't make the live sessions, because during this pandemic, you know, you're not getting every kid into a meet, you know, for a lot of different reasons, whether it's, you know, Wi-Fi issues, technology issues, but most of the time it's up, you know, playing PlayStation till, you know, 6 a.m. issues, and then they're sleeping till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's what I found with my students. I teach middle school. So, you know, I would record the meets and, you know, post them on my YouTube channel for the kids that were just getting up at 3 o'clock, you know, in the afternoon, so that they weren't left behind. So, I was, I'm, very comfortable with the technology. I also have an online, platform where, I would, I would create assignments where I use ExamView, TestMaker, different things. And the kids would submit their answers electronically to me. And, and I would post those assignments to the students. So, there was always this interaction, between us. So, the pandemic for my students, they were remarkable. They were absolutely remarkable. And I couldn't be more proud of my students, to be honest with you, how they just kind of flowed, right through it for the most part. There are a couple of kids out of 72 kids I have, there are a couple of kids that, slipped up a bit for, different reasons. But, I saw it with my own children. My daughter's a middle schooler. She was fine staying home, doing the work, but without our help, she wouldn't have been able to do it on her own, if we weren't there, if we were first responders working, but she had the parents home able to help her. Whereas my son, he was miserable at home. He missed the social aspect of it, and it was really difficult for him. So, every kid is different. Even in the same support system, same environment, every kid is different. And, teachers just have to be aware of that. And sometimes I think teachers aren't sensitive enough or, empathetic enough, for these kids.
Yeah, true. I think districts are not sensitive to it.
Yes.
Like you said, every kid is different. I got twins, girl and a boy. My son, he's got to be visual. He's got to have that social interaction for him to, to really be engaged. My daughter, doesn't matter with or without anybody, she's still, engaged. So I think that's the big thing, with a lot of these districts now, is that they don't have that empathy for students.
Right.
So, that's the big thing. I don't know how your district did it or everybody else's district, but, nobody failed in our district. You couldn't fail. Nobody stayed back because of it.
Not in our district. Kids failed. Too many kids. And I was pleading with the superintendent. I said, listen, you have too many teachers that just aren't flexible enough.
Yeah.
And there were so many teachers that would just, they would, just give the kid, a handout or a packet, and expect these kids to sit there and work through all of this stuff on their own. And I told the superintendent, I said, listen, you're going to have a mass of failures if you don't set some kind of standard. And, they tried, and in our district, in our building, actually, the lowest grade that you could get is 50%. So if you didn't do an assignment, you got 50%, which, I was fine with personally. Other teachers were furious that, how can you give a kid 50% when they haven't done anything? Well, there are a lot of different reasons why some of these kids weren't getting stuff done. And, whereas the high school in my district, they didn't have a minimum grade. They didn't have, no failures. So there's, the administrators printed out a list of 43 pages of failures, kids failing. 43 pages in a school of 500 kids, maybe a high school. That's nuts, but, it's just, every district is different. Every building's different. Every administrator's different. It's a really, really tough time for these kids. They were just burnt. They were burnt way, very early into this. They were burnt.
Correct.
And rightly so. And rightly so.
And that's the thing. It's like if they were struggling prior to school closures, what makes you think that all of a sudden now that because they're home they're going to do remarkably well,
exactly,
and everything. It's just like that's just common sense,
right?
So.
And in our district we have about 30% of our kids with special needs with IEPs.
Yeah,
and it is
we need to talk about those. Yep.
It is a joke that the IEPs and 504s were being met, in our district or any district. It is a joke that the accommodations for these students, were being met. But yet these kids are still going to fail, at some kind of outrageous rate, to just, for 1,000 different reasons. And, we as educators failed those kids. And that's what I said to my superintendent. I said to my superintendent, that list of 43 pages of failures, that is a reflection on us. That's not a reflection on the kids. That's a reflection on us, the professionals, the teachers. That's on us.
Yeah. Poor planning will give you poor results.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Poor planning, I don't think they thought it would last this long.
No.
And they just roll with it. Yep. And I don't think they really addressed every issue.
Yeah, like in my county here, it was so frustrating because it was like every week the narrative changed. Every week it was something new. Every week you would push out something new, a new memo. So by the time we got to the end of this marking period, it was decided that they weren't going to give grades. They were going to give a pass or fail. Right. Kind of like what some of the collegiate systems probably did. Mm-hmm. And at that point, they gave the kids the option at the end, if, for sake of their GPA and their transcript, if they wanted to get a grade or if they wanted to just get a pass or fail put on their transcript at that point. But I went in, like when it started, I went in with the assumption and philosophy, no child is going to fail. Like that, it's not going to happen, like period. So I was telling my teachers, like, get out of the brick and mortar mindset. I said, this is a whole new ball game we're in right now. So it's like, you gotta think about this a whole lot differently. And it took a couple of weeks to get people to get out of that brick and mortar mentality and kind of get into the e-learning, distance learning mentality. And it you know, luckily for them, it kind of, they embraced it in time. But yeah, it was rough.
I know for grades K through 5 at my school, we didn't give any letters. We didn't give anything but comments on their report cards. So that was really difficult, especially for those we hadn't seen. And I know I'm with a charter school, but they were just like, you know, don't say anything in regards to if the child was doing bad or good. Don't make any references. So a lot of what we did was really blanketed when it came to the comments we made, which I felt was a bit of a disservice, but.
And at the end of the day, who is that supposed to be helping?
Right.
Nobody. Listen, feedback is the number one thing in the classroom. You know, a student can show 80% growth just on feedback, you know, in the school year. So not being able to provide feedback for students, you know, we lost these last 4 months. You know, the students lost, you know.
I mean, well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I'm just, you know, listening, you know, I think that with teachers and this whole grading policy and expectations, people forget what it's like to be a student. I'm just going to take myself. I know how I was in high school. Marv, be quiet. Like, you know, and I mean, but I say that, I mean, because I wasn't like a wild student. I wasn't out there doing anything crazy, but I know I wasn't motivated either. It's like I would do stuff for certain teachers because I knew they would call me.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And Marv, you know my mom.
Yeah.
If O.E. Wilson came up there, it was a problem. So I did not want that to happen. So I made sure I maintained a certain average. But I distinctly remember junior year, I forget the teacher's name, but I remember I had like a B average and I wasn't even trying. I was just doing the work, and I would, you know, the teacher, you know, she was, you know, put information out, ask questions. I was always answering the questions, yada, yada, yada. And then it became almost like, you know, you get ridiculed a little bit for being smart. So you had that whole dynamic. But, you know, teachers forget what it's like. It's the same thing I say with administrators. Administrators forget what it's like to be in the classroom. That's why you rarely find me in my office. I always have my walkie with me because I'm in these classrooms, not to like, I get you, but I want to see what's going on. I want to be in the room, you know. I'm routine every morning out in my buildings. It's small enough I can do it because I have the smallest middle school in the district. But I literally go to every classroom every morning. My last stop is usually my child study team office. Tell me what I need to know, what we got, what's on the horizon, you know, and everything like that. Because you have to remember, once you disassociate, disconnect yourself from the classroom and the instructional process, you really lose, you know, you really kind of lose touch because, you know, you don't know what's going on. And teachers forget that, what it's like to be a student. And I'm all like, what was it like for you when you were a child? Like, how did you learn? How did you like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, you have to, and so what it boils down to is the humanistic aspect of it. Right. It's like, just be human about it for a second. Right. Put yourself or reflect back to what it was like when you were a child in the classroom. And I know me, after like 20 minutes, I'm done. So, right. You know, like,
and even as an adult, Ed, like you're saying, like we have probably all taken classes as adults, and even, you know, we might have done some online, but have any of you taken 7 classes at the same time online? Like that's another piece, like, you know, you gotta, yeah. And so that's why I'm like, if I'm sharing a lesson with my kids, I'm not gonna do a full 45-minute lesson because teenagers ain't gonna dial in for 45 minutes. Like I give them a good 15, 20 minutes of what they need, let them go, do what they need to do. I'm always here, you know, to answer questions and things like that. But like you said, you have to be realistic about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing. I know that we started it off in my district, a lot of teachers was given more work than they normally would give in the classroom, as the kids was in the classroom. And we had to tell them that, like you were saying, 15-minute mini lessons, and then give asynchronous learning for them, where they can learn at their own pace, different websites such as CK12, which goes up to K to 12, where students can watch the video as much as they want. They can do practice questions, and then they can, do the assigned work, where, they can go at their own pace. And actually with that website, which I pushed in my district, you can give feedback. You can see what answers the students gave, and, you can provide, feedback, based on the students' answers. But like I said, at the beginning, it was crazy. I had, kids calling and crying, saying that, teachers giving 20 pages of work for a second grader.
Yeah.
Come on, how realistic was that? That was ridiculous. So, we had to tell them, they got to give more synchronous, which is, they work individually on, assignments, and they work at their own pace, because every kid is different. Some kids will get it right away. Some kids, they take their time with it. And like you said, some kids get up at 2:00.
Yeah.
And they still can complete the assignments. Everything's not over at 3. As long as they complete it before the night is over, it counts.
Right.
So
my students have submitted a lot of assignments at 2:00, 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't question it. I'm like, yes, the teacher in me is like, what are you doing up that late? But then I'm like, hey, do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Playing video games.
Yeah. You know what? I'm like, hey, as long as you get it done.
Exactly.
I definitely want to thank all y'all for coming out. I got a particular question I wanted to close the show out with. But again, before we wrap this up, I want to thank all of you guys for teachers. Like, everybody knows how it is to be a teacher. I think all of us kind of agree, especially you guys doing it. Teachers are like probably the most essential job that we can have, right there with doctors and lawyers. I say this all the time because, you think about it, children spend more time with their teachers than they actually do with their parents when you think about it. Yeah. By the time you get home. So it's that much more important to have qualified teachers that care. Teachers not worried about like, oh man, I got to go in here and do this again today. We need teachers that have passion. So I applaud you guys because everybody knows nobody becomes a teacher for the money, and some kind of way we have to do something about that. But Neil, I'm glad you weren't there, so I could kind of go there myself. Like, that's why I especially thank you, Neil. You were a teacher that was like, back then, okay, listen, we going to the crib. You know what I'm saying? You want to come to my house after we finish bowling, like. I'm quite sure there had to be some kind of violations, but you can get away with stuff like that in Newark. Like, that's the thing. And it was absolutely, you said it perfectly. It was absolutely what we needed. We couldn't have a teacher that just had us for 50 minutes and then don't care nothing about us after that. Like, the testament that we still have a friendship 30 years later showed that you went above and beyond just teaching. And I'm not just the only child that was affected by it, you know what I mean? So big hat, man, we thank you for doing all that you did. We thank you for being who you are, because everybody wanted to do that. I mean, how many of your coworkers was scared to go to their own classrooms, like Newark is a different kind of beast. So, I appreciate you. I appreciate, all you guys and what you do. But one thing I always do is I try to tell people every chance I get, and that's why I'm kind of glad for this platform, because right now all the protests are going on for police brutality, inequality. You're looking for justice and all that there. And I don't want to see this movement die, but my question is with the disparity of things. For me personally, this isn't something that I read in a book. This isn't something that I seen on TV doing an article. My personal experience was talking about Newark. I went from kindergarten to 8th grade. I went to my church school, so I was always in private school. I didn't go to any public schools while I was in Newark, except for I think my 5th grade year I went to Elmwood. But other than that, I was always had a private school experience. So by the time it got ready for me to go to high school, I was literally terrified to go to West Side. Like, I all the stuff that I heard about West Side, like, I had one guy in my church that graduated from West Side would tell me, like, listen, man, if they ask you for your lunch money, just give it to them. Like, dude, am I getting ready to go to high school or am I getting ready to go to jail? Like, which one is it? So that always bothered me. So it was to the point where I was so scared. I asked my mom, could I move down to North Carolina? So I actually started high school in North Carolina. And they start in August down here, which means I missed like the first month of school. Things didn't work out. So by the time we got ready, when we left school for Christmas break, I ended up moving back to Jersey, and that's how I got to West Side, because that was my school district. Arch High wouldn't let me in because I had passed the test, but I would have to start the year to go to Arch High. I couldn't transfer in the middle of the year. So I bring that up because I did 2 months of school in North Carolina, Wilmington, North Carolina, New Hanover High School. When I left my freshman year for Christmas break, where we were at in biology and where I was at in algebra, I didn't get to the same exact place, the same exact lessons in Newark until after we came back my sophomore year from Christmas break. So what I learned in 2 months, what was taught in 2 months in North Carolina, it took 2.5 years in Newark. My question is, with the disparity in these different places and areas, how do we take the protesting from just the inequality of police brutality and stuff? What is it as a community? What is it as parents that we could do as far as going to our Board of Education and saying, like, this is not right. I don't want my child to say either they failed or they passed. I want to see, what is it as a community? How is it as a community that we could go and invoke change at the Board of Education, at our schools, at our local levels, to where we don't see this disparity, to where you don't get a certain education, like you say, in Montclair, and then you get something else down in Newark. Like, what is it that as a community, as parents, that people that actually care about something like this, what are some of the things that we could do in our local communities to bring about a change in this particular area?
I'll jump in on that to start. I think that's a loaded question, to be honest with you. It has a lot of layers as far as answers. I think everyone will have, obviously, their own take on it in their respective area where they live. I think for me, I look at it 2 ways, or maybe even 3 ways. Three-part answer, and I'll make it very, very quick so other people can join in. The first thing I would say is to what Neil mentioned, that teacher, or that, I'm sorry, not that teacher, but that assistant principal who approached him about, a white student entering, his classroom. Those of us who know Neil know that, it's not about that, with him or anything. And so I can definitely respect that. But I would also say that at this particular moment and in this particular time is now where people, who may not be, Black or Hispanic or whatever, we need, in terms of allies, we need people who are not being directly impacted to also start standing up and speaking out and challenge people in those, when incidents like that happen. Because to me, that's telling to me, you know what I mean? Because why would you be worried about the white kid as if something's going to happen to her? Like that mentality to me needs to be challenged, you know what I mean? So that's the first thing. And that takes place probably in different settings or in different ways. But, my point is that type of mentality or practice needs to be challenged directly. You know what I'm saying? That's the first thing. The second thing is, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, is, again, our forefathers marched and, and everything like that. We have the Breonna Taylor law, which is great and that's awesome. But now is not the time to back off. We can't have the matchstick effect where it fizzles out. We have to continue and shift the conversation to more action-oriented things. And each one of us within our respective districts or positions, we have that ability to, impact some kind of conversation, within your respective building and even, within your district. And the last thing I would say is politically, that, you can't have any kind of movement or any kind of change without some kind of law being attached to it, or some, being produced. And so that's where you have to continue to mobilize and organize with, local CBOs and community-based leaders to work towards. And we may not be the ones who could not initiate that, but make it happen, but we are connected with people who can. So whether that's local mayors, senators, so on and so forth, that needs to be a part of the action plan. And, I'll leave it at that.
I totally agree. I'm just going to, piggyback on what you said. Every area is different. So, how they go about everything. I know one of the things we do in the Rawway is that we have subcommittees addressing certain issues. And one of them is education. And Rawway, in the middle school and high school, we have white flight, where they go to the different high schools or Catholic schools. And they leave the district. Rawway is probably 70% white. But once they get into the middle school and high school, it's 80% minority. So one of the things that we talked about in the subcommittee, which I'm on, which is education, is that we got to address these issues compared to our surrounding towns or surrounding population. Compared to our towns that have similar population, we're always failing our black and brown kids, and it's all based on what's going on in the classroom. Mm-hmm. We got to hold these teachers accountable. We got to hold our students accountable. We definitely got to raise the bar. I know that word rigor is the big thing, but that's got to happen in our classrooms in order for our students to prosper and be where we want them to be. That's one of the fights, that should be going on with our protests. It's not just the police brutality. There's so many other issues. Like you said, that's a loaded question, that Marvin asked. It's so many levels, but I think education comes along with it. We talk about the economy, hiring, housing, all those things need to be a part of the discussion. We just can't take our foot off the brakes. We got to go in here and express our issues about all these things, so they can be addressed. Like you said, laws got to be in place. Things got to be in place in order for us to succeed. Mm-hmm. And I just want to piggyback real quick, Marv. Like you said, kids see everything a teacher does. Mm-hmm. The teacher's probably the most influential person in a kid's life, because listen, kids see everything. They hear everything. And believe me, kids know if you care for them or you don't.
They know.
And we all know,
that.
Teachers who cared.
Yeah, we all know those teachers that were just doing it. They didn't care. It was just a job to them.
Right. It's more than just A's and B's.
Yeah.
ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. I remember this one kid in North. I used to take the train into North, and I would always stop and get breakfast. I never ate the French toast. I would always put it in this kid's desk, and he would come in every day like surprised that he's got French toast in his desk. And he would. That was the best thing that ever happened to this kid. You would see a smile on his face. And I remember like mid-year, he was like, I don't know who's putting it in my desk, but excuse me, I want to thank them because I bring it home. This kid was a foster kid. He was like, I'll bring it home and, that's my dinner. So you never know what's going on in the kid's life, you never know. And the teacher's impact can go miles, can go, it's just important that, teachers start to care about our kids.
Yeah, you're so right. Like 30 years later, here we go. We still connected. Like,
and that's
a
huge.
Beautiful thing. That's a beautiful
thing.
And
there's a reason behind that. There's a reason behind it because he cared. Like he said, he did we think it's little things, but it's big things to the students.
Yeah, you can't just talk the talk. You got to walk the walk.
Right. I remember giving kids sneakers, giving kids clothes, because the kids would, joke about what they wear. Part of the noise, but little things. I'm thinking little things like that. That means a lot. I remember, a kid that I had that didn't speak no English came into my classroom, and she wound up graduating from the University of Georgia, and she wrote me a letter. I don't know how she found me, but she found me, wrote me emails, thanking me that, that I showed her the importance of education and how it can provide for not just her, but for her family. Things like that, that the impact teachers have, you know what I'm saying?
Salute. I like that.
I just want to, kind of check in with this question marks. I've been sitting here listening to the answers and, thinking about some of the things that, that were said. And, I just want to, kind of back up, I don't know. Yeah. I remember Leonard, Leonard, you were this tall, thin, well-dressed, clean cut, kid. And I remember you. There you go.
Oh, you got the yearbook. Look at Lee.
And it's funny because, I think about, my experience, Marv, I don't even know if you're aware, but I think, Marv, I'm mixed. My father's black, my mother's white, but.
Hey, stop it. Y'all see number 10? Pretty boy number 10.
That's fun. But, my mother, changed my last name because my name was originally Cornelius Givens. That's what I was born, Cornelius Givens. But, my mother didn't want her mixed children growing up, perceived black, because my father wasn't part of the picture. Mm-hmm. So, she felt like if we could pass, it would help having the last name of Pallotta, rather than my father's name. Now, they were never married, so, that might have been part of it too. But, just seeing, starting with just, that type of mindset where, just my last name is going to benefit me, and on top of that, the last name Givens would have handicapped me in some way, would have been a hurdle or some type of obstacle, for me to have to overcome. Marv, and I touched on this a bit, working in Newark and then working in Opakon, the system is set up to keep brown people where they are because, the white people are talking about white flight, they don't want them up here in Sussex County. They don't want them up here in Morris County. They want brown people to be where brown people, they can do whatever they do down there. Just don't come up here. Now, that's not everyone, obviously, but that's
it's too much.
They're close to the majority.
Yeah.
And I truly believe the system is set up for brown people to fail, man. It's a miracle kids get out of Newark. It is a small friggin' miracle. Yeah, I'm thrilled to see Leonard doing well, Marv doing well. When Marvin looked me up on Facebook, I couldn't believe, because when Marv, and last time I heard from Marv, he was in bad straits, and then to, see him doing well with a family and a father, religious, it's just wonderful to see. But, I tell people, and I don't want to sound cynical, but it is what it is. This capitalism would not survive without an uneducated population.
Absolutely.
Capitalism just couldn't work. You need people to populate jails. You need people to work these, crappy jobs, to pick our crops, to do whatever. You need people to be, cleaning people in buildings, and so that the 2% can be, uber wealthy. And that's just the way the system is set up. And I don't. Education is the key is the equalizer, like Malcolm said. It's the passport to the future, and if you can keep as many people as possible away from that education, keep them out of that, that's just how you, maintain power. And, and I don't want to sound like a nut or whatever, but, that's just what I've come to believe, because I see it, I see, it's just what I've seen. I grew up in East Orange. I grew up in Newark, that's where I'm from. And, now living up here in Sussex County, quiet is good, the chaos, I don't need that anymore,
Yeah.
My best friend's a police officer in Detroit, and I visited him. His kids are my godchildren. I would go out there and visit him, at the end of the school year every year. And the first time I was out in Detroit, we're probably talking, late '90s. I heard, what I thought were fireworks all day long. And my friend who's the police officer in Detroit, I said, Gary, and he's, brown. And I said, Gary, I said, isn't it a little early for fireworks? And he looked at me and he laughed. He said, those aren't fireworks, gunshots. I said, Gary, I've been hearing these all day long. Are you kidding me? But that's the reality for people. That is their reality. And working in Newark for my first 10 years in education, that was the norm for me, and I didn't see or understand anything else. And the kids that, I would take to my house and stuff and do things with over the summer, take them to the aquarium, take them to museums, take them to bowling, take them to the beaches. I wanted them to see something else because so many kids just never get an opportunity to see anything else. All they see is their corner, or all they see is, the hood, for the most part. And, I just think kids need to see other people doing well. They need to see people doing well. People like Marv doing well. You guys doing well. People need to see that. And the more kids can identify with other role models, not just gang members or rap artists or, athletes, the more people can see other role models, the more they can believe and hope that they can do something better. But until, people just get fed up enough where they're just not going to take it anymore, I don't see it changing. My wife and I go to almost every board meeting in our town, and there is only a handful of people at these board meetings every single month, a handful. And board members see this and they know this, and they know that they can get away with whatever they want because there's no
opposition.
From the community. There's not going to be a backlash, and they're not going to be voted out. So, until people really exercise the power to vote and they understand, how powerful that is, that change, it's not going to happen.
What Neil, right there, yearbook?
Neil, that's what you wrote me. I'm not going to read the last part. We have a lady on, so.
Well, are you serious? What the hell did I write? I can't.
This is what you wrote. This is what you wrote. I have it in black and white.
Dude,
I saw the end of it.
No disrespect, Miss Willis. I don't know you like that.
Man, I'm so jealous because the reason I can't pull out my yearbook is thanks to Neil.
Why? What did I do?
Remember we got the Friday that we got our yearbooks, I was like, yo, go ahead and sign my yearbook for me. We had a bowling tournament that night. And you was like, all right, well, I'm gonna just leave it with you tonight and I'll get it from you in the morning. We go to the bowling tournament that Friday night and the Jeep gets stolen.
Oh, I remember that. I remember you. Yeah.
Driving the Jeep, right?
Yeah.
My Jeep, and that Jeep that got stolen twice, actually, I wound up giving that to one of my students.
Wow. I wish they had still had the yearbook in there.
remember that one? That's me and Mr. Potts.
Yeah. Oh, look at Ed. Looking like G Bo, boy. That boy looking like Nino Brown for real right back then.
Boy, my hairline was jacked up.
Well, man, I want to thank all you guys for being on, man. We definitely got to do this again. I think you guys brought out some real good points. Before we go, I want to give, like I said, I want to give a shout out to all the graduates this year. My nephew CJ Carr. Shout out to Hope Merritt. And one of these days, I'm gonna have to have guys. We got this girl, one of my friends from church. We got Raya Parker. Raya Parker is down here. She just graduated. I believe she's 14, and she's already getting ready to go to college, fellas.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm like, I definitely got she's maybe probably the smartest person I know.
Marv, what I was going to say to you is in the chat box, I just kind of, proposed or suggested if you guys want to do like or form like some kind of like monthly group where we share resources and everything. No one needs to. Yeah,
we could definitely do that.
No one needs to feel obligated to put their phone number if you don't feel comfortable, but, at minimum, if you want to put your email, but it's in the chat box. So
if I can figure that out, I'll do it.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that because I just realized that we had a whole chat going on this whole time. I'm just now seeing it. So I want you to close out with that saying that you said about what makes great teachers. I think that was real good. And then when all you guys close out with your final remarks, if you want to give out your information for other people to come get in touch with you, y'all more than welcome to do that. And like I said, I gather all the other information and have it on my page throughout the week where we can actually, people could go on there and be able to contact you guys. But Neil, like you said, you started this thing early because I remember when my oldest son was graduating high school and I would have math problems. Like, listen, man, that's above my daddy pay grade. I remember calling you, and next thing I know, hey, listen, Marv, I'm gonna send you some links. And this is before internet, before we was using internet like that there. So like you said, you was already ahead of the curve on this thing. So we appreciate that. And shout out to Miss Pallotta too. Shout out Miss Pallotta, who was our principal, Neil's mom. I think I shouldn't even have to mention it. I think it's sad that she would have to think along those terms. Like, I need to change my son's name so he can have a fair shot. Like, this is America. Like, there we go. Shout out to Miss Pallotta.
Shout out Miss Pallotta.
Yeah, man. We have to change this narrative. Like, we no longer we can no longer settle for being second-class citizens. And that comes from police brutality to education to the way we live, where we can live. For America to be what America is supposed to be, a lot of this stuff has to change. We shouldn't have to. A woman shouldn't have to worry about that because I have African American children. I have to worry about their name. So, because I don't want people to view them, or I don't want them to come in at the bottom of the curve. Like, we have to change that narrative some kind of way. And I said the other shout outs, but one of our panelists is also a graduate that just recently graduated, Miss Shayna Willis. I'm sorry, I keep saying Willis. Miss Shayna Willis. What did you graduate? What did you get your degree in, Shayna?
I got my second degree in elementary education this year.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's funny because I heard Neil and Edward mention, I know Edward's a principal, and I know Neil mentioned that he was a principal and then he went back to the classroom. So I've been debating on going into our principal's program at North Carolina Central University this fall. And I'm just like, I love the classroom so much. I can see myself going in there and coming right back out, going toward being a principal and coming right back into the classroom. So
I tell people in situations like that, even if you're, and I think Leonard, you're a math supervisor or department.
Yes.
I would say, consider that because you kind of get the best of both worlds.
Well, actually, I have my Admin 1 certification because I'm all about having options for myself. I told myself that years ago.
That's the other thing. You always, I would say whether you decide to do it or not, pick up the cert anyway because you never know. You never want to. I mean, the first rule of business, like you never miss an opportunity. So
that's right.
You don't want an opportunity to come along and you can't pursue it because you don't have the certificate.
Exactly.
Right.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in this week. Once again, like I said, we're going to have to do this again, guys. I mean, I think some good information shared, and I think obviously you guys still had a lot more to share. And I think this is one of those areas that we could talk about, on a regular, because like you said, we can't invoke change without, it has to go beyond just conversation, But the Bible has a verse where it speaks about let us come together and reason. And I think that carries over into every aspect of life, Like, I think we need some not like-minded people to come up with real solutions to the problem because everybody doesn't have the same point of view or something. So I think for us to really get to total equality, we're going to have to, come together and work our heads with these totally different points of view and find some kind of common ground that we could all agree upon, Leonard, one of my best friends in life, he's Muslim. Mother, father, Muslim, and treated me just like a regular son. That it never changed. Our religious beliefs never changed our friendship or didn't have an impact. Why? Because at the end of the day, it shouldn't. It shouldn't.
Yeah,
that shouldn't have any
pork chops with me.
And I done gave him up, man. I've been off the pork since '96, man.
I'm just joking. Don't pay me no mind. I ain't got no.
Yeah, but man, we definitely gonna have to do this again, man. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you guys can, remember while we're actually doing these, and this is feeding to Facebook Live. If you guys have any questions for any panelists, you could always shoot them on the Facebook feed, and we'll try to get to them. If anybody ever have any questions for the panels, like I said, check my page throughout the week for contact information if you want to contact some of these people to find out what you can do locally, and just if you had any questions about teaching, admins, or whatever the case may be, schooling, any questions of that nature, you'll be able to contact them. You guys be ready for next Tuesday. I want to give a shout out now to all the Father's Day for the Sunday coming up.
Yeah,
happy Father's Day to all you guys. You know,
Yes, happy Father's Day.
times we get beat up, but next Tuesday show gonna be our show. You know what I mean? I'm gonna highlight some of our fathers in our community doing their thing, because all of us are not deadbeats. All black. We're not all sperm donors. You know, some of us out here really being fathers, doing their thing 24/7, and love our kids, not doing it for a pat on the back, but doing it because that's what we want to do, and that's what we should be doing. You know, so I want to give a shout out to all the fathers, and that next Tuesday show will be about the fathers. And thank y'all for coming out. DeAndre, Lysa, I know that I love you guys intentionally, and we'll see y'all guys next week. Peace.
All right, cool, man.
Bye-bye. Nice meeting everyone.
Nice meeting you too.